So, yeah. How not to suck at Exterminatus. This is kind of the first video I've ever done with this. I just kind of, after way too many instances where I'm on a team with people who just clearly have no idea what they're doing, and a quick search of YouTube not really turning up a very decent kind of beginner's guide, I figured, why the hell not? I got a mic, I got the game, I've played about 20 hours. Maybe I can prevent a wipe from a guy running around with a bolter and cracking bolts on round 19 or something. If I prevent even one, it might be worth it. Speaking of which, may as well start with the classes. Got 3 of them, obviously. Tactical, Devastator, Assault. 2 of these are good. One of them is useless. That would be him. I know some people are going to go, Tactical's not useless. What are you talking about? Well, I'm going to go over it kind of weapon by weapon and just kind of explain why I think Tactical is pretty much useless. First off, we got the bolter. What does the bolter do better than the heavy bolter? Not do anything better than the heavy bolter. It's got weaker damage, less effective at range, less ammunition. Doesn't need to set up, but you know, when you're moving, honestly, the heavy bolter is only slightly less effective anyway, and the setup time is just not that big of a problem when you're dealing with these orcs. Plasma gun. Crappier version of the plasma cannon in every way. No AoE on a normal shot, lower ammunition. The charge shot that does have some AoE uses a ton of ammunition. It does have pretty high damage, it kills reasonably fast, but only against the lower level guys like slugs and shooters. Stalker. Crappier version of the las cannon. Pierces fewer targets. Can't kill the second tier orcs with one headshot. Because it does lower damage, it uses more ammunition, so it effectively has a smaller supply than the laser cannon does. Meltagun. Inferior in pretty much every way to the hammer. The hammer will kill pretty much anything in one hit in a fairly wide arc in front of you. The meltagun will kill low-level orcs in one hit, but it'll often leave scar boys and hard boys alive, whereas the hammer would kill them. It has no advantage over using just a hammer or an assault marine. Stormbolter, pretty much the same story as the bolter, except even less ammo efficient. You will spray so many shots to kill orcs, you will run out of ammunition very fast, and you will hog ammunition that the Devastator class could use considerably better. Vengeance Launcher. Pretty much, again, just a weaker version of the las cannon. Only 18 bolts standard, whereas the plasma cannon has 200. Yeah, 200 standard. So basically, you've got 18 shots with a decent blast radius versus the plasma cannon, which has 200 shots with a decent blast radius, and, in a pinch, can charge up to have an enormous blast radius. No reason to use this. Even worse is that since it sucks so bad in the player versus player section, most people probably don't have the perks for it anyway. So yeah, basically all the weapons here are just done significantly better by one of the other classes, to the point where the slight advantage you have in like mobility or whatever just doesn't matter. What else do you have going for you? Well, arguably you have slightly better damage in melee, but that's kind of illusionary, because if the Devastator spams Stomp, he's just as capable of holding off a bunch of sluggers as the Tactical is. And Scar Boys and Hard Boys, you can't melee them as a Tactical. If you try, you will die. You'll get your ass kicked. Actually, you could almost argue that the Devastator Stomp is better against them because it stuns more reliably and allows them to run away. So basically, I guess you run a little faster, but the Devastator can run faster than all the orcs already. The roll's pretty good, but it's nothing compared to the jump pack on the Assault Marine. So, what do you have going for you? Almost nothing. Worse weapons, inferior durability, not as mobile as the Assault Marine, melee, a slight bit of extra melee damage that doesn't actually matter in gameplay. Nothing. This Tactical class pretty much sucks. Still, there are going to be some guys who are going to insist on playing it, so I guess we may as well talk about it. First off, general perks, rapid deployment, complete shit. It actually does cut spawn time, but anything that requires you to die in Exterminatus, automatic crap. Laraman's Blessing. This is good. I wish they had this on the Assault Marine. Basically, once your health regeneration starts, like a second, and you're full health. This is really good. This, I would almost argue, is better than weapons versatility. Almost. Because it allows you to stay in the fight a lot longer, and you can be much more aggressive because you know you can regenerate your health very quickly if you lose it. Tactical readout, this sucks. I know some people say it's good because, oh, you can see the orc health, so you can pick off the weak guys. Yeah, well, the problem is that to see the health, you have to aim at them. So if you aim at the guy with full health, what are you going to do? Not shoot him and then go look for someone with less health? No, you're going to shoot him anyway. And if you look at the guy and he has low health, you would have shot him anyway, so who cares? Serrated Combat Blade adds a bit of extra melee damage. Pretty good for dealing with sluggers and stuff. Lets you melee more aggressively. Does not add enough damage to be even slightly viable against Scarboys or Hardboys, so you still can't melee for shit after about wave 10. Weapons versatility. 90% of the tactical marines probably take this because that's pretty much their only real advantage, is they can carry 2 slightly inferior weapons, so they can kind of be okay. Personally, I feel like why would you want to why would you want to be like the jack of all trades, master of none, when you could be awesome at one thing? Because Exterminatus is a team game. In like player versus player, this can be useful because often you can't really count on other people to help you. You're often on your own, just kind of doing your own thing, so it helps to have weapons to cover all areas. But in Exterminatus, you're with a team of 4 guys, and ideally, and in practice, you're usually working pretty closely together. So you kind of want to focus on your one area and let other people handle others. So I feel like this isn't as good here. It's okay, though. I can see why a lot of people take it. I think arguably the best thing is that if you take 2 primary weapons, you basically get double the ammunition, which can be a big deal. Favor the armory, not really worth it in my opinion. Basically, it just means you start with 2 extra grenades, because how many grenades you have during the course of the game is completely dictated by random drops. It's rare that you get so many boxes that you could actually restock to your full level. So I would say this isn't useful. This sucks for the same reason as this, because it's only useful if someone else has died, which shouldn't be happening. This can be useful. The extra grenade damage is pretty good. The problem is, again, the grenade spawns are very random. If you don't get grenade spawns, you've effectively wasted this slot. I think it's too situational. I think it's too dependent on the random grenade drops, so I don't really like it. Weapons perks. Enlarged plasma chamber. This is good because the plasma gun does not have that much damage, or that much ammunition. This greatly increases the ammunition. Improved charge time. I don't think it's useful, because I don't think you should be spamming the charge shots, because they use so much ammunition. Targeter is okay. I think Kraken Bolts is better. Targeter and Kraken Bolts is pretty good for, say, the first 5 to 8 rounds, but once the hard boys and the scars and stuff start coming, the bolter just isn't that effective, so I would say, why bother? I don't have these. Vengeance Launcher sucks in player versus player, so I don't have them, and I don't think most people probably have them. I don't have this, but I mean, it's obvious what it does. I don't think you would need it, because the melta-gun regains a lot of ammunition from a single box, and also I think that the melta-gun should always be paired with another weapon, and only used as a secondary if something gets in very close. Charge time can be okay, but again, since I consider the melta weapon kind of a secondary emergency gun, I don't think the charge time is that useful. I suppose if you were going to be adventurous and try to use the melta as a primary, then this could have its uses. But still, I don't consider the melta to be a viable primary weapon. Stalker bolt ammo reserves. These are okay, but I don't consider the Stalker to be a very good weapon. It's just worse than the Laz cannon in all ways. And I think that if you're going to play a tactical, you want to be more of a general purpose guy. Sniping is not your strong suit. This is just terrible. Half the time all it does is waste ammunition by firing a second shot when one would have killed a guy. This is okay, but I don't like the Storm Bolter. I still think it uses way too much ammunition. Increased reload speed is useless. It's almost always possible to find a short break to reload. If not, you can usually switch to a secondary weapon and finish off whatever's attacking you. Unless you're a freaking mob, in which case it doesn't even matter. So, that about covers him. Like I said, I don't think he's useful. Devastator Marines. First class, it's useful. All 3 Devastator weapons are useful for slightly different reasons. The Heavy Bolter, pretty much a general purpose gun. Heavy Bolter is good at clearing out the lower level stuff. Pretty good on Scar Boys too. Not very good on Hard Boys. Not very good against Knobs. Pretty much your job is going to be crowd control. You're going to want to fire on the weaker orcs, preferably aiming high to try and get headshots. because those will kill faster. And, you know, generally just keep the mob under control. Just make it so that there's not so many orcs floating around that people can't maneuver. You should really save your ammunition, and preferably leave shooting of heavier units like snobs and shield boys and scar boys and stuff to a las cannon or a plasma cannon Devastator. Speaking of which, plasma cannon is very good. You basically treat it like a grenade launcher. It does do self-damage like a grenade launcher, and I have seen far too many noobs kill themselves by firing this into the face of like 5 hard boys who are trying to melee them. I have also seen too many good players get killed by some idiot running in front of them when they've been standing in place firing. If you see a guy firing his plasma cannon from a good position, stay the fuck out of his way. Let him shoot. Do not run in front of him. Basically, it overlaps somewhat with the bolter as crowd control, although it relies obviously on AoE instead of just shooting. Charge shots. Charge shots use a lot of ammunition. I think with the default 200 rounds, you get 5 fully charged shots. That's not a lot. I would say basically just avoid them. Don't use them. The only time I would say to use them is if you see a guy getting mobbed by lower level orcs. It might be worth it to charge it up and fire one kind of right at his feet to try and help clear him out. That's about the only time I would say to use these. Maybe if you're like looking right at a very large spawn in of orcs, you might be able to, and you think you can maybe get like 8 or 9 of them under the pie plate, then maybe go ahead and pop one off there. But overall, I would say you should just avoid using charge shots. Just fire the normal ones. They still have AoE, and you get 200 of them. If you just use the normal ones, the plasma cannon is very efficient. It's quite ammo efficient for dealing with the smaller guys. Also, obviously, it's more maneuverable than the bolter. So you're more free to move around and kind of maneuver and stuff. But obviously with the downside that, unlike the bolter, if someone does get up in your face, you can't just fire at it to kind of drive them off you without killing yourself. So with the plasma cannon, you're gonna have to get good with the bolt pistol. You're gonna have to kind of keep an eye out around you to try to keep people from getting close to you. And you're also gonna want to learn to whore the hell out of that stomp. Last one. Laser cannon. This is personally my favorite, and I think it's one of the most underrated weapons in Exterminatus. Most people kind of disregard it because they think, well, oh, it's a sniping weapon and it's horde mode. Well, the thing is, it's not really a sniping weapon. It has AoE, just not kind of like a grenade launcher kind of AoE. Basically, if you shoot a laser cannon at a guy, and there's another guy behind him, and another guy behind him, and another guy behind him, it will go through all of them and it will kill every single one of them. So it has AoE, but it has line AoE. So basically what you want to do is you're going to want to run around, get a bunch of orcs to stack up and kind of like chase you down a hall, and then you're going to fire down through them, and you're going to kill about 5 of them with each shot. And you will kill them because the single target damage of this is enormous and does not appear to diminish at all by shooting through people. It will kill any low-level orc with a single hit. It will kill a scar boy with a single headshot. And it will kill a hard boy with 2 shots that get past his shield. It will kill a knob with 3 headshots. And furthermore, it will stun that knob with each headshot, allowing you to stun lock a knob and kill them easily. I would actually argue that against melee knobs, the las cannon is a safer way to kill them than the hammer is. The hammer is still better against the ranged guys because it stun locks them and you don't have to save ammunition. Although if if your hammer guy can't get to the ranged guys, the las cannon is extremely effective at keeping the big shooting knobs under control. Because again, 3 headshots, they're dead, and they have a habit of standing still, and they have very big heads. It's not hard. It's also rather ammunition efficient, because since you can shoot through multiple guys to get kills, and since almost every shot is a kill, it's surprisingly ammo efficient. You start off with 30 bolts. That's a bit low. I think the ammunition stores is really a good perk with this, since you don't really need extra damage or anything. So I would take the ammunition perk with this most of the time. That doubles it to 60, and I've almost never run out of ammunition at that point. I'm almost always able to last until a bunch of boxes drop and I can kind of refill up. The actual weapons perks with it I don't think are useful. You've got, obviously, las cannon capacitors. Firing rate, I don't think, matters with the las cannon. I think it's actually bad. It's a temptation to spam it when you should really be taking aimed shots. Stabilizers, I don't even know what these do, because it seems to me where you point the las cannon and where you fire it is where it hits. Some of the other perks. Artifactor armor. Artifactor armor is great. I think it's about 2 seconds, literally, and your armor will begin to refill. There's a huge difference between needing like 5 seconds sitting undamaged and 2. It's pretty easy to find a piece of cover where you can just kind of duck in for 2 seconds to start the regen. It's surprisingly harder to find a place where you can sit for 5 to start the regen. I actually like this better than Iron Halo because I think that frankly the regeneration is more useful. Whereas this kind of just increases, and I also kind of like it because it doesn't actually increase the armor you have, so the bar kind of fills up faster. Whereas this, it increases the armor, but it takes longer to recharge, and if you get interrupted while that armor is recharging, you're not getting the full benefit out of it. This is good though, and I think to some extent it's a personal preference. Do you want more armor total, or do you want faster regeneration if you lose your armor? I think I kind of play the Devastator more aggressively than some, so I kind of prefer this, but I can see how guys who just kind of want to sit at the back and root in place and not have to move as much might favor this. And of course it's possible to double them up. But personally I think that's kind of overkill, unless you're going to play a kind of funny tanky build, where you just kind of going to try to get guys to pound on you. Which, if you were going to try, like, say, an all-Devastator team, which I don't recommend because of ammunition issues, but you might want to mess around with it. One guy taking both of these doubled up could pretty easily serve as a tank to kind of distract everyone while other people shoot them. Signum Link sucks. You don't need help seeing the orcs coming towards you. Feel No Pain, not as good as either of these because it doesn't affect ranged damage. And both of these effectively provide you with increased armor versus everything, whereas this is only really increased armor versus close combat damage. Fast Stomp. Fast Stomp, I think the Devastator should really treat the Stomp as an emergency weapon. I don't think you should be spending perks to kind of boost it. I think you should be spending your perks to improve your core things, which is kind of high armor and shooting. And I don't like Furious Stomp for the same reason. Although I think it's slightly better than Fast Stomp, because I think usually you can see when you're going to need to stomp. So having more damage on the stomp is better than just being able to do it faster. Reactive Blast sucks. Usually if your armor is about to breach, you should be running away. It would only hit guys who are in melee with you. And if you're being meleeed and your armor is about to break, you should be running away. Which means that even when this thing goes off, it's probably not going to really hit anybody because you're going to be running away. Other weapons perks. Bolter Expertise. I don't think this is as useful as it is in player versus player. In player versus player, obviously everyone is running around and you're never quite sure where people are going to come from. So being able to just kind of quickly root your feet is really useful because then you can attain your full rate of fire. But that's not really true in Exterminatus. In Exterminatus, you usually have... You can see where the orcs are coming from. You know decent positions where you can set up and have a good field of fire. And you'll still tear down your bolter quite quickly, so being able to set it up slightly faster, I don't feel that's worth it versus being able to just shoot longer. Which is why I think heavy bolter coolant is really needed, because the difference is extremely noticeable. Without the coolant, it's very easy for even a medium-sized horde for you to just not be able to shoot them all. Where you'll just overheat with about half of them left and you just won't be able to shoot. And if you're not shooting, you're not doing your job. So I think that this is really important because this will effectively increase your DPS by just allowing you to shoot continuously. And I think ammunition stores with the heavy bolter is the same reason. Because the heavy bolter, the more time you spend firing with the heavy bolter, the better. Improved charge time. I think this is useless because, like I said when I was talking about the plasma cannon, I don't think you should be using charge bolts very much at all. Plasma heatsink, on the other hand, is very useful because it effectively doubles the number of shots you have before you overheat. I would take this if you were going to use the plasma cannon, as again, like the heavy bolter, it's effectively boosting your DPS by allowing you to be shooting more. Assault Marines. I think there are only two good builds with the Assault Marines. One of them we see right here. Hammer, Killing Blow. If you're taking a hammer in Exterminatus, you ought to be taking Killing Blow, because without Killing Blow, the hammer is just lackluster. It's not that great. With Killing Blow, it becomes extremely effective. It will kill pretty much anything that isn't a knob with one good swing. Keep in mind though, Killing Blow is a direct hit, and that does matter in Exterminatus. You'll sometimes see where you'll swing, a guy will get hit and kind of stagger back, but he won't die, and you'll be like, well, what the fuck? What it is the hammer has a slight AoE beyond the head of the hammer, where it will hit a guy, but it won't trigger Killing Blow. Basically, if the handle of the hammer passes to a target, you should get that one-hit kill on anything but a knob. Because what Killing Blow actually seems to do is it basically just boosts the damage really high. Rather, it's not actually an instant kill, it just really increases the damage. Against knobs, usually you'll need about one full combo to kill a normal knob. That's not a problem on the ranged knobs. Really, you should be the go-to guy to kill the ranged knobs because you can take them down fast. Basically, no risk without wasting ammunition. The melee knobs, I'd actually almost argue you should leave to a laser cannon guy because they're in the middle of a bunch of other shit. And I think the laser cannon guy can kill them with lower risk, while you just kind of focus on one-shotting all of the weaker orcs. It's that the hard boys don't always die, even when you seem to get a direct hit on them. Other build that works is kind of the tank build, which is Chainsword plus Zeal. And this is pretty much the same thing as the hammer. If you're going to take the Chainsword, you ought to have Zeal. And that's because without Zeal, the Chainsword doesn't do that much damage. And it doesn't make you any tougher. But with Zeal, it doesn't do any more damage, but since you gain health with every swing, it makes you much tougher. You can stay in melee with the lower level orcs much longer, which allows you to keep their attention, keep them off of other guys, and let them shoot into it, or allow a hammer guy to kind of drop in and hit the guys behind you and then bounce back out. Also, Zeal is obviously really good because usually you can find one or two guys scattered around who are on their own. So if you get low on health, you kind of bounce out, you drop down on one of those guys, you swing at him a couple times, and you've got a bunch of health back. Now, what to pair with those? Because as we've just established, if you got the sword, you're going to use Zeal. You got the hammer, you're going to use Killing Blow. So now we got to talk about the other perk that you're going to use with them. It's going to be one of these, obviously, because the pistol perks are just useless. If you're an Assault Marine, you're not going to be firing your pistol very much. And frankly, since one box fills up like a quarter of your pistol, even if you are firing your pistol, it's not hard to keep it full. So we're looking up here. Furious Charge, I think, is useless. 99% of your entries into melee combat are going to be made by jump packing in and then swinging, which means that death from above is better. I still don't think it's that useful though, because I don't think that the extra damage is that great. And I think you're going to do most of your damage by swinging, so I think some of the stuff that helps you when you're actually in the melee and swinging is better. This wouldn't seem to do that, but it kind of actually does, because Impenetrable reduces range damage, and the orcs will shoot into melee at you. So if you've got a few shooter boys up on a cliff or something sniping at you, and you're in a melee, this will let you stay in a melee a lot longer. And since it actually reduces the damage you take rather than just, say, adding more damage or like adding more shields, it reduces it. I think it helps this keep you healed, because since it's reducing the incoming damage, the healing here will help offset this more. So I think it pairs well with this to reduce the damage you're taking from range to help you stay in the fight longer. Sure Strike is pretty good too. I think Sure Strike is better with a hammer though, for a reason I'll explain in a second. Final Vengeance sucks. Again, any perk that relies on dying sucks. Air-cooled thrusters, I've seen some guys say they like these. I don't think they're particularly useful, because I think 90% of the time your profile is going to be kind of jump in, hack and slash away for a couple seconds, jump out somewhere else. And using that profile, you don't really need that extra stuff. I mean, I guess if you're going to try to bounce around a lot with a lot of like short hops and jumps in the middle of the fight, it could be useful. But I personally don't think that really helps much. I think what all that really does is just kind of stops you from swinging and stops you from killing. So I personally don't think this is that useful. True Grit kind of sucks. It doesn't give you a bolter, it gives you a pseudo bolter. It shoots slower, the accuracy is worse, the damage isn't that great. I actually think the bolt pistol is slightly better for just sniping at range. And if you're in close, obviously you're just going to smack him with your melee weapon. Blast off, I don't think it's that useful because it's kind of like with reactive blast. If you're jumping away from the middle of a bunch of guys, it means you're probably retreating, which means you're not going to be there to take advantage of any little bit of extra damage you did. And maybe killing off one or two guys with really low health as you jump away isn't particularly useful. Now, getting back to Sure Strike, there's a reason I have it on this hammer. And the reason is FF. FF with the hammer will do an overhead slam into the ground that is fucking ridiculous. It has an AoE of like 10 feet at least on its own, and Sure Strike seems to increase that even more. Basically, any of the level 1 orcs like Choppas or Shooters who are in that AoE will be insta-killed if you have Sure Strike on there. And anyone even further away will be stunned so long that it's trivial to just spam it, chaining them together, spamming it, and just clearing huge areas. That move is borderline broken in my opinion. For the first 10 waves, I usually don't even swing the hammer normally. All I'm doing is jumping into the middle of these hordes, spamming F twice, slamming the ground, and killing pretty much everything around me. The Sure Strike just makes it even better because it extends the stun and it increases the damage somewhat. Even Scar Boys and Hard Boys, it's not quite as effective, but it's still pretty effective. It will fuck them up if you do it in the middle of them. I think it takes 2 of those slams fairly close to kill a Scar Boy. So if you do one, you basically stun everyone around you. Then you spam another one, and that second one basically kills everyone around you. It's pretty ridiculous. It only starts being somewhat less effective when you get a lot of Scar Boys and Hard Boys in later levels, because it can be interrupted, and it does take a bit of time to get the slam to land. So once you start to get up to higher levels, you'll start having to swing normally more, because it's faster. You kind of bounce in, you swing a little bit, and then you bounce out. But for the first few levels, that FF combo with Sure Strike is ridiculously broken, in my opinion. It works okay with the chainsword, but it's just not quite the same. You don't get that insane AoE damage that can actually kill people. It just kind of extends the stun more, which can be useful, but I don't think it's not quite the same as you get with the hammer. Obviously, there is the Power Axe. Oh, the poor Power Axe. The Power Axe doesn't hit half as hard as the hammer, and it's about twice as slow as the sword. So, now, it does have a Zeal skill, but the problem is that the Zeal skill does not seem to factor in the somewhat higher damage of the Power Axe. It really seems like the amount of health you regain per hit is about the same as with the chainsword, but obviously you swing way slower, which means that it just does not seem to work as effectively in a tanky build, and that slight bit of extra damage just doesn't seem to be worth it. Obviously, if you're just looking to kill stuff, the hammer is way better. And since this seems to produce more of the more health regeneration, this is better for a tanky build. So the Power Axe, I don't see the point. You really don't see a lot of them, and I think you don't see that for a very good reason. Is that I just don't think it's that useful. I've tried it numerous times. I've kind of tried it with with Killing Blow. I mean, I've tried it with Sure Strike to kind of see if it worked. Was good for stun locking, and I've tried it with Zeal, and like Impenetrable and stuff. But it just doesn't seem to work as well as either of the other options. I just don't. I think it has the same problem as the Tactical Marine: Jack of all trades, master of none. If you want to kill shit, you want the hammer. If you want to tank shit, you want the chainsword. It just doesn't do either as well, so it's just not useful. Obviously, you don't have the power sword, but it's pretty much just a reskinned chainsword, obviously. I think that about covers the classes. So, like we said, useful. Not useless, but just not required. It doesn't do anything better. I think the ideal class structure would be 2 Assault Marines, 2 Devastators. On the early waves, the Devastators should probably have either heavy bolters or plasma cannons to help clear out all the crap, and both of these guys should probably have chain swords, or one of them should have a chain sword and one of them should have a hammer. The guy with the chain sword draws all the orcs in around him, slicing at them. The guy with the hammer drops down, does the FF stun move, kills fucking everything. By about round 10, both of them should go to the hammer to deal with the knobs and the hard boys and such. And the Devastators, I would say both of them should probably go to las cannons, because I think the Assault Marines can handle crowd control at that point. But one of them could stick with the plasma cannon, just for that little bit of extra crowd control, and because the plasma cannon does decent damage if you strike directly, so it can still be okay against the higher end orcs, although it's not that good against knobs. I would definitely say, though, that by round 10, at least one of the Devastators should have a laser cannon to help snipe out the knobs and the heavier units and kind of thin the crowd for the Assault Marines. I don't think the Tactical Marine has any place in any composition after round 10. I don't think it does anything that the other classes don't do significantly better. Other compositions that could work, I could see 3 Assault Marines and 1 laser cannon dev working. The laser cannon dev would have a glut of ammo, which would let him pretty much spam the shit out of all the ranged guys, and with 3 Assault Marines, you would pretty much rape the melee. The reverse is more tricky, because 3 devs will use a lot of ammo. I would say in that case you should probably have 1 Assault Marine with the chainsword, whose basically sole job is just to kind of sit next to the devs, and when shit comes toward him, he starts swinging it, tanking it, while the devs shoot it. I would say if you're going to have 3 devs, I would argue that no one should have a heavy bolter. It just uses too much ammunition. I would say that the plasma cannons and the las cannons should be all that you should use, because those are significantly more ammo efficient. But I still think 3 devs is too much. I think it just uses too much ammo, and I don't think enough really drops to keep them properly fed. I think you're always going to have at least one guy who's kind of low on ammunition and not working optimally if you have 3 devs. So personally, I think you should only have 2 devs max. And that's another reason I don't like the Tactical Marine, because I think if you have 2 devs and then you have a Tactical, that Tactical is going to be sucking ammunition that the devs could be using instead. That is the good thing about the Assault. The Assault is basically an Assault guy you can almost count as not needing ammo. He's going to need grenades, and he may need the occasional box for his bolt pistol, just for like plinking squigs and shit, but basically he doesn't need ammo. So basically, when you get an Assault Marine, that's one less guy who's using ammunition. And that's almost as valuable as the damage they do. Not quite, but almost. Anyway, I guess that about covers the classes and how to set them up. I guess if I keep doing this, maybe I'll kind of put up some gameplay videos talking about what I'm talking about. Maybe some good tactics I've found worked on certain maps, but I don't know. We'll see if I even continue. I think just having people use the proper loadouts would solve about 90% of the problems you have in Exterminatus matches. Alright, I'm out of here.